Welcome to Champion Minded, the podcast for those who aim for excellence, not only in the sports arena, but in life. My name is Allistair, author, speaker, mindset and performance coach, and my goal is to help you unleash your unlimited potential and provide you with the tools to achieve greatness. Are you ready to become champion minded? Then let's do this. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Champion Minded podcast. I'm Allistair, your host. Good to have you with me. In this week's episode of What It Takes, we have professional Red Bull cliff diver Ellie Smart. So a little bit of background about Ellie. I met Ellie on a visit to the University of Minnesota, where she's on the dive team there. Her diving career began at the age of 5, where she instantly fell in love and set her sights on competing in the Olympics. At the age of 15, she packed her bags and moved away from home to train in hopes of making her dream a reality. However, and unfortunately, due to a back injury, she fell short of that dream. But she was given the opportunity to dive collegiately at the University of California, Berkeley, where she qualified for the NCAAs and won a national championship. Due to an ethical issue, which she gets into on this show today, she made the hardest decision of her life to retire from diving. She did graduate with a degree in media studies and then went on to start her master's in sport psychology. We also discussed that today in the show, and I can tell you if she does pursue this career, she's going to make a very, very good sports psychologist or in the mindset field. Anyway, still feeling like she still had more to give in the sport of diving, she went cliff diving for the first time and immediately realized that everything up to that point in her life had been preparing her for this. So in today's show, we talk about her purpose, we talk about her vision. A very, very big area that we touch on today is overcoming fear, because I can tell you for one thing, you would not get me standing on the edge of a cliff diving off. But Ellie shares her thoughts, gives us some ideas and routines and rituals that can help us overcome certain fears, not only in sports but in life. Today, Ellie is focusing on her professional diving career in addition to running the Clean Cliffs Project, a foundation headed by her. She founded that this past summer to prevent water pollution worldwide and inspire others to take action through the art of cliff diving. So guys, I know you're going to enjoy this one. Enough from me. Here's Ellie Smart. Hey, welcome to What It Takes on the Champion Minded podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's so cool you could make it. So, first time having the sport of diving on. Do we call it extreme diving, cliff diving? What?
So there's two names. There's high diving and then cliff diving. But they're kind of both the same thing, but you'll hear it referred to as either or.
Okay, so is the one... Okay, I know the diving indoors, like we see at the Olympics or World Champs, for example. And then we have the diving, which you're famous for, is outside and all those exotic places where we're so jealous where you get to go.
Yep.
It's Red Bull diving competition. Is that the series? Is that the name of it?
Yeah. So there's normal diving, and in normal diving you have a springboard and platform, and then the type of diving I do is called high diving. So it's actually double the height of the Olympic platform. And it's actually now an expansion of regular diving. It's another event that's been added by FINA. So it's called high diving under FINA, which is the international governing body of water sports. And then Red Bull puts on its own World Series of events, and it's called cliff diving in Red Bull. Cool. But it's essentially the same thing.
Cool. So before we get more into that, because we obviously want to learn how it works. Is it a series? How many competitions per year? Is there rankings? Is there a world champion? All these type of things that we see in other sports. But before we get in there, give us a little bit about your background growing up, school, how you got into sports. Was diving your first love? So take it away.
So I got into sports when I was 3. One of my best friends called. I remember this phone call, and she said, "You want to come to gymnastics class with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, Mom, can I go?" And then her mom was like, "Oh, no, we meant, like, does she want to come watch and then go to dinner with us after?" And I just cried and cried until they let me do the gymnastics class. So I started gymnastics from that moment on, and I loved it. And then in the summers, I dove with a country club league, and just for fun. And I already liked flipping, so diving was a natural thing to do next.
And how old were you at this stage?
So I was 3 when I started gymnastics, but I was 5 when I started diving, just in the summers.
Okay.
And then...
And did it start off like just diving in the pool for fun with other friends and just having fun, or was it straight into like type of coaching practice?
Kind of a combination. So
Okay.
I'm from Kansas City originally, and there we have a country club league. So there's a bunch of different pools throughout the summer that people go to, and you have diving practice for it's like 2 months of the summer, and then you have competitions every week. So it's very low scale. It's not competitive. It's just for fun. So we started doing that. Actually, my first dive meet, you had to be 6 to compete. And once again, I'm like, I really want to do it. So we lied and said I was 6, and I was really 5.
It's like getting into the club when you're 18,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And then they said they called Eli to the board, and everyone was like, go. I said they called Eli. They didn't call Ellie, and they're like, no, they meant Ellie. Like, go up there. And so it's always a funny start to diving. But my first love was gymnastics. I loved it. I wanted to go to the Olympics. Like, I have journals and journals of, like, me signing my autograph and practicing. And every night in the shower, I'd practice my Olympic gold medal speech. And I was just obsessed with it. Like, the coaches would have to turn the lights off in the gym.
And this was at 6, 5,
This
6?
was, like, between 6 and 12. It was all I thought about. I loved it. I actually had my parents transform our garage into a gymnastics gym with mats, and after school I'd have my friends come over and during play dates practice gymnastics with me. So they always make fun of me still, like, you used to make me do push-ups. Yeah, sorry.
So there was already a little bit of craziness at a young age.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And then I kind of started to realize that I just didn't love gymnastics as much as I thought, and my Olympic dream wasn't going to come true in that sport. And
what age was that? Where did that realization?
I was about 11
Okay.
when I realized that. And so that following summer, I was at a dive meet during the summer, and a coach came up to my mom and said, hey, your daughter's pretty good at diving. Has she ever thought about doing it full time? And so then my mom told me, and I got all excited, like, oh, some other coach thinks I could be really good. And so then I went and tried some more competitive diving out, and I really liked it, and I decided to transition into diving opposed to gymnastics.
So this was 11, 12 years of age, yeah.
Yep. And so from there, I started diving full time, and right away was like, well, now I'm going to go to the Olympics in diving. And so
by the sounds of it, it was already from a young age that you had this Olympic vision, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you started gymnastics, and you had an Olympic vision. Then you went to diving, and you had that Olympic vision still.
Yeah, I think it was when I was like 6 or 7. I remember sitting and watching the Winter Olympics, and it was ice skating, and seeing these people compete and stand on the podium. And I was like, I don't care what sport it is. I want that. I want that moment. I want to be on that podium, and I want to go to the Olympics. And it just kind of became like an obsession.
That's fascinating, because I can relate to that, because when I was around the age of 7, 8, I started playing tennis. And already I knew at that age I wanted to be a champion. And I had that vision. I played tennis at a good level, but it was such an expensive sport, especially growing up. I came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't afford. And once you get to a certain level, then it does involve a lot of money, regardless what sport, because then comes better coaching, then comes better facilities, travel. It becomes pretty expensive. And so I took up running. And because all you need is a pair of running shoes. And even actually growing up in South Africa, we didn't use running shoes. We just run barefoot there. It's like completely like... And I still carried over, like you had, that vision of, I want to be a world champion. I want to be a champion. And even though it was a different sport, I still had that same desire. Yeah. Okay, so you're 12, and now you're heading the direction of diving.
Yes, so I started diving, and I really enjoyed it. And then we went to a competition at Mizzou, and that was my first experience going on the platforms. Before that, I had only done the springboards. And I went up to 10 meter, and I did my first jump, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I was meant to do. That was the moment I really fell in love with the sport.
First competition?
It wasn't my first competition, but it was the first time I'd been on a platform.
Okay.
So had the opportunity to jump from a 10-meter platform. Where I'm from in Kansas City, we don't have any pools with platforms. So I'd just never been exposed to it.
So it's not jumping off roofs or walls or anything crazy like we see on YouTube and stuff?
No.
Would you recommend that for practicing?
No,
okay.
not at all. So then I was like, oh my gosh, I love platform diving. And then I started training it a little bit more every once in a while. My mom would drive me up to Mizzou to practice. And I remember I did my first 10-meter optional, so that's a more difficult dive. And I absolutely ate it. I had bruises from my hips to my shins. They were everywhere.
So from hitting the water, you get bruises. So sorry if I don't sound too clued up with impact and stuff, but you get pretty badly bruised when you hit the water?
So if you don't hit the water correctly, vertically, then you can get some pretty bad bruises. So after I did that dive, everyone's, expecting me to be crying. And I came up there and was like, that is awesome. And I think I ran back up and did like 5 more of that practice. And all of them were terrible. But it was so exciting for me to be up there, and I just loved the thrill of it.
Awesome. I mean, they say there's 2 types of people. There's when adversity or something crazy or scary comes around, there's the ones that go, no ways, and there's the ones that go, this is so cool.
Yeah.
So you obviously fell into the second category there.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. So let's go on to preparation and training. They say that the years, especially your teenage years, you actually put in more hours than you do once you're, let's call it, professional. Was that true for you? Did you pile in what they would call the 10,000 hour theory of you need 10,000 hours? I don't know if you know Malcolm Gladwell's theory on that.
Actually, I read that book, and after I learned about the 10,000 hours, I sat down and I calculated how I could get 10,000 hours before the next Olympics.
Wow.
And I tried. I haven't made the Olympics yet, but
I like
it was
the word
something
yet. Yet
yes.
is a growth mindset.
Yes, I'm all about how you speak to yourself and the words you use. I think will determine how far you can get. It's your self-talk that's so important.
That's huge. I mean, that's something I've, especially in the last year or two, been really focusing on when working with athletes and speaking. As you know, we spoke at almost said Michigan there, boy. Where at the moment?
University of Minnesota.
Thank you. Okay, you can see I travel a lot, so I get seriously confused. Okay, sorry, Kelly and Shelley about that. But talking about self-talk, how important that is. For the listeners out there, and we get all different types of athletes from different sports out there. Tell us a little bit about self-talk and where did it start for you? Have you always been like that, or because we are our worst critics, especially at this level, professional level, Olympic level, your level, world diving level. Where did that come from, and how does that manifest?
So for me, growing up, training, I always had really positive self-talk. I always believed in myself. I was always wanting to try things and do things. And
where did that come from, though?
I don't really know. I think it was something I was kind of born with. I think it was just...
Were your parents very positive people? Did you... Was it in the family, or was it just something you were... I mean, I was the black sheep of the family. I mean, I don't look like my brothers. I don't... and I'm super motivated, positive, etc. Not to say they aren't, but was it your family like that, or were you just more like that?
So I'm the only athlete in my family. Everyone else is they're great singers or play instruments, and that's just something I'm terrible at. But I definitely would say my mom is one of the most positive people I know. She's one of those people, if you have an argument before you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning, it's over. It's a new day, it's a fresh start, and it's a new opportunity. So I think it definitely came from that a little bit. And I mean, I remember as a kid, it drove me nuts too. Be like, no, we were in a fight, I'm not over this.
Drama.
But as I've gotten older, I've really learned to appreciate that mindset of once you lay your head down and you go to bed, it's over. You can't control it anymore. And the more time you waste worrying about it or being upset is more energy and time you're taking away from bettering yourself the next day.
I mean, you're still so young. You're 22 to know this type of stuff. I wish I'd known this at your age. But I think there's also, I don't know if you're religious or not, but there's a quote in the Bible or a scripture in the Bible that says that, don't go to bed with trouble or quarrel. So like it type of relates to that as well. But for the listeners out there, how can they improve their self-talk? Because it's so easy to listen to doubt and fear and that voice in our head that says you can't do it. What about you? How could you help, younger athletes especially in that area?
So when I was younger as an athlete, I never talked to a sports psychologist or read books or did anything like that. I had no idea this field even existed. So I was someone who was like, no, I'm not going to visualize a dive or have self-talk. I'm just going to go up and do it 1,000 times till I can do it right. So it was something I still did struggle with when I was younger, and I wish I would have known that taking a step back and visualizing and talking yourself through things would make such a difference. So for the younger athletes out there, it really is important and will make a difference. But for me, I think, and now I'm forgetting where I was going with that. What your question was.
With regards self-talk and how, someone can improve their self-talk.
So I feel like the first step to improving your self-talk is becoming aware of what you're even telling yourself. Because so many times we just go through, I had a diver at practice yesterday who was like, oh, I'm terrible at that, and then just walked away and went on, and he didn't even realize he had said that he was bad at something. And that's just something that the more you say it, the more you just kind of believe it, and it sticks. It becomes a habit, and you just continue to repeat that. And so I said, no, you're not bad at it. You just didn't do that one very well. Let's try it again different. So I think becoming aware of what you're saying is the first step, because if you don't even know, you're
catching yourself.
Yeah, catching yourself.
Yeah.
And then take some time to just practice doing that. And once you do that, then start, making little critiques here and there. And for me, I think one of the easiest things you can do is change how you word things. So instead of saying, I have to go do this, saying, I get to go do this. Because when you exchange those words, it's totally different. It's a different mindset. It's a different attitude. And your whole outlook on it will change. So that's a big thing I think is important.
I definitely think after your professional diving career, or probably even during your professional diving career, you're going to make a great mindset coach, a great psychologist, because you already know your stuff. And
I wish I could take my own advice better, though, sometimes.
Harry.
But thank you.
So tell us about a typical day in training. I know now you're intern coaching at the University of Minnesota, but let's just say a diver, a professional diver. What does a typical day look like? How many hours of training in the gym? All these type of things.
So high diving is a really unique sport in the sense of we don't have a high diving facility in the United States. There's actually only 2 permanent high diving facilities in the whole world. Okay,
what is a high diving facility? How high is it?
Okay, so a normal diving platform is 10 meters.
Okay.
And in high diving, women compete anywhere from 20 to 23 meters. So that's double the height of the Olympic platform.
And that in American distance is yards?
It's 10 meters is 33 feet.
Okay.
So it's 66 feet roughly that we dive from.
Okay.
So there's not actually platforms that we can do our dives off of. So as a normal platform diver, you can practice the dives you're going to compete every day if you want. Whereas we only get to practice our dives in warm-ups at a competition and in the competition. So it's very rare we get to do our dives. So our training has to be really adjusted to that. So that
must be tough. That must be a challenge, because obviously diving is all about timing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the timing of how many turns and twists, and please excuse my lack of knowledge of what they call all the things, but that must be tough.
Yeah. So basically what we have to do is we have to break our dive down into 2 parts, the first half and the second half.
Okay.
So if we have 20 meters, we practice the first half from 10 meters, and then we go back up and practice the second half. So we do both halves, and then once we get to a competition, we have to put that together into one dive.
So it's like chunking.
Yeah.
Have you heard the term chunking? Where you chunk your stages?
Yeah, exactly. And so for us, the mental part is even more important, because we can't do the dives, so we have to at least be able to train them in our minds visually over and over and over again, so that we know when we get up there on that platform that our brain's going to know, connect part one with part two.
Okay, I'm going to definitely get back to the visualization part, because I'm sure that is a huge part in your sport. But what about strength training, balance, all these type of things? If we're to go like the physical side, how important is that?
It's so important. So you're hitting the water at 50 miles an hour. So one little mistake, a little forward, a little back, I mean, the reality is you can get knocked unconscious. We actually have 4 scuba divers in the water during competition. So if something does happen, they're there to get us. So you do have to be really careful and make sure your body is in the best shape it can be, so it can withstand those impacts that you're asking it to take kind of over and over again.
You're hitting the water at 50 miles per hour.
Yeah, it's like hitting concrete.
Wow.
It's tough, and it doesn't feel good if you don't do it right.
Okay. Random question: are you a roller coaster person? Are you a fun ride person?
Yeah, I like roller coasters.
Okay, I thought so, because I'm not. So I just get spinned around 2 or 3 times, and I'm dizzy and feeling ill for the rest of the day. So, getting back before I forget about it, visualization. I know it was 2 minutes ago, but my mind goes around 20,000 things at once. How important is visualization in the sport, and how often do you do it?
It's extremely important. I think it's the most important thing in our training that we do, because
Really?
if you are physically fit and you can do all the lead ups, like, that's great. But if you can't put those things into action up there on the platform, it's extremely dangerous. You know, you have to have your mind on point to be able to do what we're doing. And especially what the men are doing, they're competing from 27 meters. So that's 90 meters. And the consequences are even larger for them. And so I think visualization is so important in training. And I think it is for all sports too. And it's not valued as much as it should be. And I know that because I used to just do repetition after repetition, and I'd never take a second to be like, okay, and visualize what I was going to do before I did it. And even now I find when I'm just diving in a 10-meter pool, if I visualize before I do a dive, it's going to be way better than when I just go chuck it and don't do it.
So is it part of your routine before every jump to visualize?
Yes.
Every single jump?
Every single jump I do.
In practice, in competition?
In practice, I struggle with doing it every single time, because I'm one of those people that likes to move really fast. So one of the things my coach makes me do is go sit down between dives. I'll do 5 really fast and be like, go sit down for a minute, think. So I'm still working on being better about it in practice, but it is definitely something before I do any dive. I usually visualize my dive 2 times. I'm kind of a little superstitious. I like things in 3s.
And how long does that take you? That visualization, that process.
I worked with a mental skills coach, and when I started working with her, it would take me a long time. I'd be able to only see part of the dive, or I'd see the dive go wrong, or I wouldn't be able to see it at all, really. And so it took hours and hours of practice. Now I can.
And would you do that practice in your bedroom, at the pool? Where would you work on that?
So, I mean, it started with just when I had free time at home. I would practice it, because it can be frustrating, and you don't want to get frustrated at practice. There's already so many elements that can make you frustrated. Yeah. So I really tried to practice it at home by myself when I had free time. And then once I got better at that, then I tried to really implement it into my practices and do it there as well.
Okay, so let's say you go to an event in, name me some of the Red Bull series where some of those events are. I think Croatia, Italy is one. I think South America has a few.
Yeah, they're in Bosnia right now.
Bosnia.
Chile, Texas, all over France, Copenhagen. They're really all over the world.
Okay, so you have all these different locations, and this is good for any athlete out there, be it cycling, golf, tennis. Is your surroundings are different. There's no place the same. So when you go to an event, do you actually go to the location, you take in the environment, you take in the surroundings, you stand on the edge of the platform or the cliff or whatever it may be, And do you type of take a mental picture and then go away and visualize that?
Definitely. So for the stops that they've already had before, this is only my second season, so I'm still very new to this. A lot of people have been doing it for 10, 15 years. So I try to watch any old YouTube videos before I leave for the event, so I can
of the
location and past events, so I can be like, okay, the platform's going to be here, the athlete's tent's going to be here, the visual looking out is going to look like this, the side angle is going to look like this, and really try to just soak in the environment, so when I get there, it doesn't feel like this brand new scary place, and that so I don't have those like freak out moments. And then once I get there, I try to go stand on the platform and just sit there and just kind of take it in and become comfortable with the environment I'm in, since a lot of times they do change so much.
And then I know I'm sticking on the visualization part because I find it's such a critical area, breathing, visualization, all these things which I believe are the small things that separate the good and the great in all sports, because they're not exciting things to do, they're boring, they take discipline. We rather want to just go out and hit balls or kick balls or jump or whatever and have fun instead of doing all that type of stuff. But for me, that's the difference between the good and the great, is how good you are on those boring things. And like you speak about repetition. But with regards to visualization, do you then have a routine where you go back to the room, and I've probably asked this, and you think about tomorrow's jump, or do you leave it until the next day? And you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Because sometimes here's what I'm getting at, and I'm good at confusing myself as well, is overthinking.
Yeah,
you can overthink it, right?
That's exactly where I was going to go with that question. Yeah, so I definitely find that you can overthink it. So when I go to a competition, I try to take maybe an hour the day before and let myself think through all my fears and visualize how things could go wrong and then how I can correct it. So if something little does go wrong, like how am I going to make an adjustment to make it better in the end? Because a lot of the times we only visualize perfect things, and I think that's a huge problem, because great, if you have a perfect start to your race or your dive or your whatever, then yeah, you know how to go on. But say you mess up on the start, have you practiced through how to work through? Then what? A lot of times people freeze and they do worse. So I think it's definitely important to like not ignore the negatives and how things can go wrong, to like accept them and work through them and then move on. So I definitely, when I go to a competition, I try to go on the platform. I try to visualize my dives on the platform. Then I'll let myself go back to the hotel room. I usually just relax and try not to think about it. And then before bed, that's when I let myself take 30 minutes to an hour to just think through things. And then I try to just shut it off from there, because I don't want to overthink it either and not sleep and then be tired the next day and not be able to compete.
Yeah.
And then kind of the next...
Do you have trouble sleeping the night before a competition?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll wake up and just be like, doing a dive, and it'll be weird. Yeah, I've had a couple strange dreams.
Hopefully you keep the balcony door locked. I mean, you don't want to be exactly diving off there and there's no pull down there. But okay, so that's great. I mean, that's I think that's enough on visualization on that part there, because I mean, we could spend an hour or two on that. Another big area, and this is why I was so excited to get you on the podcast, is there's no one better qualified to talk about fear probably than you. Because to 99% of us, when we watch this on TV and we watch extreme sports, we the word is, that's crazy, that's nuts. How do you do that? Talk to us about the element of fear and how you overcome that.
So fear is something I'm really interested in my studies as well, and something I like to focus on, because I think fear is what just kills us in life in general, no matter what you do. Being afraid of something is going to hold you back. And so I found in high diving, people come up to me all the time and they're like, oh, you're so fearless, I would never do that. Like, gosh, I don't know how you do it. And the truth is, like, none of us are fearless. And we actually have a saying in high diving between all of us: if you're not scared, do not go. You need to be scared. Because if you're not scared and you're not thinking and you're not paying attention, that's when you're going to get hurt.
If I can quickly come in there, I wrote down this quote. It's from former CEO of Yahoo, Melissa Mayer, and she said, "I always did something I wasn't ready to do. I think that's how you grow."
Definitely.
Would you relate to that?
Totally. And it comes down to getting out of your comfort zone. And it's scary to get out of your comfort zone. And I think a lot of people think, oh, you got to go from point A to point D. But it's like, no, you go A to B to C, and you expand your comfort zone. You make it bigger one step at a time by facing even little fears. Like I try to face one fear a day, whether that's sending an email to someone I'm nervous to talk to, or just going up to a stranger and like saying hi or complimenting them, or, having a tough conversation with someone, whatever it may be. Like, I find that just facing those fears, just little fears too, and making that a habit makes it a lot easier to just grow as a person, really.
So, for example, what advice would you give to someone out there who is, let's say, at a conference, at a sports event, and they see that famous person or their hero, and they just want to go up and say something to them, but they can't? That's like everyday fear we have in those types of things, or go, speak to somebody. Or maybe that guy or girl you like, for example, in school or whatever. How do you overcome that? What advice would you give?
So, I guess I would say everyone is just another person. Everyone's a person. So if you're nervous to say hi to someone, remember, they're just like you. They're nervous to say hi to someone too.
Yeah.
And then, think about the times someone's come up to you and said hi.
Yeah.
It usually feels pretty good. You're not like, oh, why'd that person come say hi to me?
Yeah.
So kind of looking at it from the other person's point of view can help you find that confidence to do it. And also, gosh, I forget what book it is, but it's like the 3-second rule. You have 3 seconds to act. I listened to a TED Talk on this. And if you don't act within those 3 seconds of deciding to do something, you won't do it. So
3 seconds is not a lot of time to think about it.
When I look at you, if I saw you, this happened, when you were having the speech, I looked at you and I was like, oh, he's so cool. Like, that's what I want to do one day. And then I was like, I have 3 seconds to like stand up and shake his hand, And so
figure it out.
Yeah. So it's like you have to just have that thought and then act on it immediately.
Yeah.
Because if you wait too long, you're not going to do it. Then you're just going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't know.
Yeah. That's awesome. So for the listeners out there, I was speaking at the University of Minnesota on Friday, was it? Thursday? I've lost track of days. You see, I lose track of days, places. And there's something, I know this is maybe off the subject a little bit, there's something about high performers and people that I know that are going places. Maybe it's just my intuition, my gut feel of when I see it, I can see it. And you came in, and I'm not just saying this, but you came in and I felt an energy come into the room, because I believe everything is about energy. I saw you coming around the side, and then we had around about 70, 80 athletes there in the room, and you sat right at the front. I don't know if that was by choice or whatever, but it's almost like, and I could feel it, was your energy, and you're just absorbing everything I was saying. And there's another trait that I find in successful people, or people that are going places. They type of you can just feel them absorbing like energy. You know what I mean? They're just like taking it. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sure, I think you're going to be an amazing speaker, motivation, psychologist, all this. You'll feel it as well. I'm sure you've spoken to some audiences already, but you can just see those who are really so interested, and then you can see those that just aren't. And that's normal, you know what I mean? And when I started speaking and I started presenting, and I do probably around about 60 speaking engagements a year. At the beginning, I used to be so self-critical, because I would look for the people that weren't interested in the crowd, and that would like steal my, I'd be trying to win them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Instead of just just focus on the ones like yourself, who I did, and there was a few others there as well, who you can just see they're just locked-eyed, ears are up, like bunny ears, like listening, so... awesome.
And going off that, I think it's important to know that that's something you can teach yourself. I wasn't always that way. I used to sit in the back and I hang out when you're with your friends and you want to be cool,
yeah.
and whatever, and I actually listen to a lot of like talks. I love listening to podcasts and talks, and they started saying things like, if you sit at the front of the classroom, you're going to absorb more. You have to put yourself in situations to succeed, even when it's uncomfortable. So for me, I didn't
say that again.
Yes, you have to put yourself in situations to succeed, even when you're uncomfortable. And so for me, I've trained myself of like, okay, it might feel awkward. What are people going to think of me if I go walk to the front? But then I have to remember, who cares what people think of me if I walk to the front? Who's going to walk away with more knowledge from this?
Yep.
And it's going to be me, because I chose to walk to the front. And so I think just for people who maybe don't do that right now, that's something you can start doing at any point in your life. You're not like born sitting in the front row.
Yep.
It's something it's self-taught. So that's just a great point that I learned.
This is powerful advice, especially for the young people out there. I mean, you're 22. You're speaking like you're 42. I mean, it's like you've been through it. But you're absolutely right. It's a choice, right? Of overcoming our fears. And I mean, I love that 3-second rule. That just doesn't give you time, does it?
No,
I mean,
and it's hard at first. It takes a long time. Like, I'm just now getting good at it, and it's probably been 2 or 3 years I've been trying to follow that.
Something I discuss in the Champion Minded book. Of Champion Minded is a book about mindset, preparation, and motivation. Is the pre-performance routine. So in there I talk about, in my experience of working with a lot of athletes from junior level, amateur level, intermediate, and Olympic level, is they can be well prepared. So they put in all the hours, great weeks, periodization all worked out, everything, high five, and then they get to the day of the competition and they mess it up, either by overthinking, misjudgment of time, getting to the event, they've forgotten stuff, all this type of thing. So I have this, what I call a pre-performance routine, prepper readiness, I call it, and it's an hour before you compete. What does your hour look like before you do that dive or that jump? Do you have a routine?
So going off that, have you heard the term choking?
Yes.
So I'm a choker. I will be honest, you can be a professional athlete and you can still choke all the time.
All right, so for some of the listeners out there, choking is basically a term used for, how would we put it, best way of getting to that moment where it counts and you mess up in a way, or you overthink it in a way.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the
you're fully prepared and you're up there and you should win, and then you lose.
Yeah.
Like that I'll be honest, that happens to me kind of a lot, and competing is still something I personally struggle with a lot. I love, people always joke, if the warm-ups were the competition, you'd win every single one. And it's true, I would. And I think for me, it's something about, I don't love to be judged. I don't love people telling me I'm good enough. And I think that's just years of being judged and kind of being disappointed with results that has made me think that way. And that's something I'm trying to adjust right now. Still, a lot, really, and get better at. But I have tried so many different things, and I haven't exactly found the perfect plan for me yet. I found a lot of those steps to the plan. So I like to get up, I like to have my breakfast, and then I like to go back to my room and just relax and think about things, and I read my Bible, and I kind of, before a competition, always pick a verse that I'm going to follow for that competition and just kind of reflect on it and the day that's coming before me. And I love that process. I think it puts me in a really good place when I get to the competition. And then when I get to the competition, I listen to my music, I do my stretching, and then I go sit back. And I really like my routine up to there. It's just kind of my routine of once I step on the platform that I need to work on a little bit with my mental game. But I definitely think that having that routine and that schedule so that you can be comfortable is really, really important. But I also think people need to know it takes a lot of time to learn it. I'm a professional athlete and I still don't have it totally figured out yet. So it takes time, but it's definitely so important. And I watch the other athletes who are the best in the world right now, better than I am, And they all have that. They're very consistent in what they do, and that's something I'm striving to have.
I think you hit the nail on the head there by saying consistency. Because that's exactly what happens. And I've even seen it, like you said, you're a professional yourself. I've even seen it in professional sport where the athlete is warmed up one way and then the next day they do something different, and you can see it disrupts their preparation. Even at that level, we can let the environment control us. So before a dive, do you like, let's say half an hour before, do you like to be around a lot of people? Do you like a lot of noise? It distracts you? Or do you like to be by yourself, sitting in a corner, meditating?
So here's an interesting point that I've actually just started realizing about myself is, so as a newcomer in this field where a lot of the athletes have been competing for so long, you of course want to look up and take advice from the older athletes. They do know what's best and know how to do things. And so what I found was when I would mess up, someone would say, oh, it happened because of this. Next time you need to do that. And then I'd do that the next time and I'd mess up and someone else would say, well, you messed up because you did that and you need to do that. And so I started looking back on it, and it was like I was always trying to follow these great athletes' advice, but what works for one athlete doesn't work for every athlete.
Yep.
And I've started to accept that. And one of my best competitions was when I was listening to rap and I was in the zone and I was tough. And I remember after that competition, even though I did the best I've done, everyone said, you're too serious. You weren't having fun. You weren't enjoying it. And so then I thought, oh, there's something wrong with how I'm preparing. And I tried to change it. And then it just kind of went downhill from there. And so now I'm trying to get back to that place where
Are you a people pleaser?
I am 100% a people pleaser.
Okay.
And I put other people before myself.
So you find it difficult to say no.
Yeah.
And it's something I spoke about the other day.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to have to learn how to say no
Yeah.
to a lot of things and a lot of people because you're not going to please everybody.
Yeah. And in those situations, you don't need to please anyone else. You're the one walking away with the medal and the experience and the everything. They're not walking away with your experience. And so I think for me, I look back and people say, oh, you were too serious or you weren't having fun. And I look back and that was the most fun I've ever had at a competition because I felt in the zone and pumped up and excited. And so everyone's perception of like what a positive or good experience is so different. Mm. So it's like, yeah, take advice, but also like trust your instincts and your guts and like what you like, because that's what's going to make you do the best.
Great advice. Great advice is find what works for you and stick to it.
Yeah.
And keep learning, like you said. And did you learn maybe from that experience of it's good to get advice, but not to use all that advice all the time. You have to like figure out what you're going to take and what you're not.
In little doses, Maybe, don't change your whole routine. Maybe just change like one little part of it, you know.
Now, something I've learned with getting older is I've learned to trust my gut feel more about things, about people, about decisions. We spoke about the other day when we spoke at the university was judgment. And it was a big thing in my life is where I'd be easy to and quick to judge people. And it's something I've been working on and something I'm very conscious on. But I do believe in gut feel of who to listen to, or that's not a good choice, or that's not a good decision to go into business with that person or do something with them. Do you have that intuition in terms of when you take advice from people? Because here's the thing, when you're a professional athlete, everybody wants to give you advice, right? Everyone wants a little piece of the action that, you see, I told her that, now she,
Yeah. I think, that's something I've just now found is like you do have to be careful what advice you listen to and what people you let influence you. And you were speaking the other day about how the 5 people you hang out with the most are kind of who you become. And I knew that, I'd heard that before, but I hadn't really put much thought into it. And I actually went home and I wrote up a list of, well, who are the 5 people who are diving professionally that I want to be most like? And not necessarily only because of their skill or like because they're number one, but who they are as a person and what qualities they bring to the table. And for me, if I can't win, I want people to remember me for being the best cheerleader, for being the best support, for being the best teammate. Because all of those things I think are almost more important than winning. It's like, great, you have a gold medal, but what do your peers think of you? But then there's that fine line of not trying to please everyone too much and be everyone's best friend, because then you don't have time for yourself. So it's really a fine line to find that balance. But it's also so important to make sure you're being really careful whose advice you're listening to, because it will affect you and you will become like that, just like you were talking about.
Yeah. I think it's also one of those areas where it's learning yourself. And through, like you did, that exercise out there, and this is a great thing, especially for the young listeners out there, is you write a lot of things down, you journal. Something I spoke about was about self-reflection and how we improve by, at the end of the day, I write down 3 things. I write down, what did I do well today? What could I have done better? And whose day did I make better? Or who did I compliment? So it's something for myself that I'm proud of, that helps my confidence. Something that I have to look inside and go, that needs to get better. And the third one is doing something for somebody else. And I think self-reflection is a big area in improving ourselves, but it can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, it can be so hard.
You know?
And I think it's so important. And the thing about it is when you start doing it, it's really frustrating because you don't understand why you think certain ways or why you do certain things. And for me, I'd really never left the country before 2 years ago. And in the past 2 years, I've been to 25 countries. I've seen so many different cultures and so many different ways of doing things. And at one point, I felt like my brain was going to explode because I'm like, what is the right way to do things? Everyone does things different. And it's you have to learn and accept that, everyone is different. Every culture is different. Everything is different. And you have to then be able to adjust your thinking based on what you think, not what your specific culture has taught you.
100%. Let's go into goals and vision. Do you have a vision? Do you have goals? Do you believe in them?
I 100% believe in them. I used to be like, when I was younger, I'd always, my goal was the Olympics. And that was all I cared about, and that was the only goal. It was like the only thing that mattered.
First of all, it was in gymnastics, and then it
was diving.
Then it was diving.
And since now that I've been studying like sports psychology and human performance, I've realized that having one huge goal like that isn't the best idea. It's setting monthly goals, yearly goals, daily goals, even if it's an hourly goal in practice, is what's so important, because at the end of the day, it's everything you do adds to each other to get you to that end goal. So I think having a plan, which is something I do now, I write down, okay, what's my goal this month? What's my goal this year? What's my goal in 5 years? What's my goal in 10 years? And keeping that plan is really important because it keeps you on track, because you have to hit those little things to get the big things. And I had a mentor once tell me, look at your life backwards. Start at the end. Where do you want to end up? And then literally work your way backwards. Because a lot of the times we look at ourselves in one place and then see where we want to go. And it looks like there's only one way to get there because we can only see the path right in front of us. When a lot of the times there's like 7 different paths. Like you can get to that same end goal in so many different ways, but we get so fixated on the one way that we think is right. And so knowing that, like, okay, maybe you didn't hit that goal of winning nationals that year, that doesn't mean you can't make the Olympics in 2 years. It doesn't, there's so many different routes to get places.
That just reminds me of that picture, I don't know if you've seen it, where what success really looks like. And on the left hand side there's a picture of success with a straight arrow up, what people think it looks like. And then the next picture is like just a squiggly ball of spaghetti, and then an arrow at the end saying this is what it really looks like.
And it's so true, because it's like nothing ever goes to plan.
No.
Nothing. Like, it's fun to plan and it's good to plan, because if you don't plan, well, then you don't have any sort of direction. But you also have to like let go of it a little bit and be flexible with that plan.
That segues beautifully onto the next part of handling setbacks. Obviously, no matter what sport you're in or arts, entertainment. Last week we had Caprio Jackson on, who's a dancer in Hollywood and now works with a lot of good dancers. And there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be disappointments. How have you dealt with setbacks and disappointments?
So I've actually had a lot of setbacks and disappointments in my career. I actually only dove 2 seasons in college due to kind of an ethical reason on the team, which is kind of very popular in the Me Too movement in the culture right now that's being talked about. And so I actually had to give up diving, and I never thought I'd dive again. And it was like a huge setback for me, and I was so disappointed I didn't like fulfill my goals. But I also knew as a person, I didn't want to be part of the team I was part of and continue on. And so I kind of took that risk to step away from the sport. And it gave me sports psychology. From it, I realized this dream of wanting to work with athletes, specifically who'd gone through similar things I'd gone through. And so in a way, it felt like this like terrible setback at first, and like, oh my gosh, my world was falling down. And then all of a sudden, this like amazing thing came out of it, and I found my passion and my calling. And then on top of that, I found cliff diving and high diving, and now I get to dive professionally, which I never, if you would have told me in that moment when I was deciding to quit diving originally, that I would be doing the two things I'm doing right now, I would have said you were crazy. So I think it's all about your mindset, and like,
how were you able to switch that mindset? Because sometimes it can feel like the end of the world. I mean, it's like everything you've given up until this point, and then it happens.
And I mean, it wasn't like instant. It was like I literally was so lost. I didn't know who I was outside of diving. Like, I was the diver. That's what everyone knew me as. And it was like,
identity crisis.
Who am I now, And it took me a good year, because I took 2 years off, and it took me a good year to figure out who I was on my own without diving. And
was that a scary experience?
Oh, it was terrifying. It was so scary. And it was like, and there was also so many different things I could have done, and like identities I could have taken on, and roles. And like, it was scary because it was like, oh, well, am I supposed to be this or that? Or, it was like I didn't know where the right way to go was. But once I started to just kind of like navigate that and then figure out like who I am as a person, that's when I was really able to take that experience from a negative standpoint to a positive standpoint, and not be like, who am I? But like, look at all these people I could become. Look at all these things I can do now. And that really just opened the doors to what I'm doing now.
Inspiring. I mean, because everybody's journey is different. And, we also spoke about the other day at the university about we all have problems. Some are bigger than others, but it really comes down to your attitude and what you choose to do today, because we can either live as victims or we can be victors.
It's really, so true.
Yeah, and sometimes it's easier out there to get that advice and say, hey, just be positive, hey, have a good attitude, but it's hard because reality is it hurt and it's derailed us, and and we all struggle from that. But that's some great advice. So you mentioned you've had some setbacks and struggles. Do you want to go into that? You want to dive into that? Excuse the pun?
Let's do it. So I think a lot of times people just assume athletes have this kind of perfect life because people portray that on the media. I mean, you want to put like an awful picture of you like on social media. Like, I mean, no one wants to do that. So I think there's this false perception of like struggles that people have and things they go through, and I know in my experience, I moved away from home when I was 15 to train for the Olympics in Texas, and then I graduated high school in 3 years, and then I went to UC Berkeley, the #1 public university in the world. I won a national championship. I then graduated college in 3 years. Then I went on to start my master's. Now I'm diving professionally, and a lot of people, I think that I haven't necessarily been through things, or they are just like, oh, you have the perfect life, like everything's so great, you get to travel, you get to do all that stuff, and that's like not the reality. And I think it's important that people know that. For me, it started in 8th grade. I developed an eating disorder, and it was so bad that I had to take almost 6 months off diving because I didn't have the physical energy to get up there and dive.
8th grade is what, 14?
Yeah.
Around 14?
Like 13, 14. And I look back on journals I journaled, and I literally write about how my eating disorder is going to kill me, and I don't care. And it's a really powerful thing and a lot of people didn't know that because I struggled mainly with bulimia. So that's not necessarily something where you're like super skinny and everyone's like, oh my God, you see how skinny she got? That's more of like a personal battle that people don't necessarily see. So for me, I kind of said to my parents, well, if I'm with the best coaches, then I won't have to put so much pressure on myself, and then I won't have these issues, And so I moved away from home at 15, living all by myself.
Your choice?
My choice. And
how did your parents feel about that? Because they obviously knew about what you were struggling with, right?
Yeah.
So that must have been tough.
I'm a very convincing person.
Okay.
So, when I come up with a plan and a PDF and all the reasons why it should work, and you walk away thinking, oh, okay, I guess.
Convincing?
Yeah. And so
I think you also got a career as an attorney as well, right? So,
yeah.
Okay.
So, I just convinced them, and they knew, I'd wanted to go to the Olympics since I was a little girl. So, they wanted me to make that dream come true. Of course, they love me no matter what, but they were just supportive of me trying everything. And so they let me move to Texas. I went to a private school and was in kind of a boarding situation the first year. And then the second year I lived on my own. And it was one of those experiences where you're this 15, 16-year-old girl surrounded by a college culture. You have no friends, no family, no anything, and you're thrown in with a lot of these older kids, and you want to fit in, and you want friends, and you start kind of doing things that they're doing, and it's natural. And so when I was in Texas, I was actually sexually assaulted. It was a terrible experience, and I remember being so depressed and being suicidal, and that's something a lot of people didn't see. And I just prayed to God I'd get another chance. And so going to Cal and being able to graduate high school early, it wasn't because I was like, hey, look, I'm super smart. It was like, I need to change something in my life so that I don't take my own life. And so it was a huge thing that a lot of people don't realize. And so Cal was my second chance. And then, unfortunately, in college, we had a recruiting incident that was very similar to my experience. And it was something I couldn't not say something about, obviously. And I stepped up and I said something. And
how tough was that?
I mean, it wasn't tough to do it because I knew I had to do it. I had to. It had happened to me. I'd experienced it, and I didn't want it to happen to anyone else. So speaking up wasn't, but the consequences of speaking up, now that was a whole nother story. I mean, nothing was done. It was kind of brushed under the rug, which happens at, companies, institutions, colleges, everywhere.
Everywhere.
And it's a big thing that's being talked about right now. And so after I did that, I was really kind of ostracized from the team. I wasn't really wanted. And so at that point, I decided...
Then you really know who your friends are, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
When it comes down
My best friends all dropped me because I spoke up, and no one supported me, even though in private they did. But in public they wouldn't. And so in that moment I said, well, I made a commitment to this team that I'm going to finish the season, and I'm going to stick to that commitment. However, in my heart, I knew I was not going to continue diving after that experience. It just was not something I wanted to be part of. And so that year we won a national championship, and I had qualified for NCAAs. And I stood up there, and everyone was crying with tears of joy, and I was crying because I had never been more miserable in my life. And I was considered the best, part of the best team in the country.
Yeah.
And so that's when I kind of, I was like, I'm done diving. I'm done. And I walked away from it, and I quit, and that's why I decided to, graduate college early as well. And it's those kind of stories and those kind of situations that not everyone knows about, that you don't see. Not a lot of, I talk about it openly if people ask me about it, but the general population, or if you look at my Instagram or whatever, you're not going to know that about me. And so I think it's just so important for people to understand that everyone is going through something. Everyone is going through something, and the people that look like they're not are probably going through the biggest battles.
Yeah, we just have to look to Hollywood and the perfect lifestyles, and then what how many suicides and how many unfortunate things have happened there. But Ellie, you're so brave.
Thank you. Took a long time to get here, but I'm definitely great. I mean, I'm grateful for all the experiences I've had, because when I quit diving, I said to myself, you know what, maybe I wasn't supposed to make the Olympics, but all these experiences are going to make me the best like performance enhancement coach I can be.
I'm going to be out of a job.
No.
Actually, come work for me.
Yeah, come work for you.
Come work for me. Yeah.
But it was that, and the shift, and that's going back to, taking negative to positive, of realizing like, well, okay, maybe this bad thing happened, but like, why? And now I'm grateful for it, because I couldn't relate to those situations if I hadn't been through them. I mean, you could relate to them, but I feel like I can relate to them on a level that a lot of people can't, which is helpful when working with athletes.
Because they talk about drug addiction and alcoholism. If I said that correctly, that's a long word. I can't say synonym, by the way. I know. I'm always conscious when I ask at breakfast, excuse me, have you got any synonym? And they're like, look at me like, okay, so it's one of those words I can't say. But they always say that advice, if you're giving advice about drug addiction or something, then, you've got to have experienced it yourself to really know what that, if I can put the expression, hell feels like. Yeah. I use it sometimes. Let me put it this way. When I was an athlete, I was pretty cocky when I was young. I was very self-assured. I think confidence was a big key to one of my successes, that I believed I could beat anybody. Mm-hmm. And like a little bit like a Lance Armstrong type of, no one's going to beat me today type of attitude. But I would struggle, and I wasn't coachable when I was younger, in terms of I'd be like judging who was giving me advice, getting back to advice of, mm-hmm. And what I'd be thinking in my head, and where we're going with this story, is I'd be thinking, have you stood on a world championship line? Do you know what it feels like to 10 minutes before I start a world championship race, which I've done 5, is that all you want to do is be sitting in the bathroom. And I almost actually missed the 2002 World Championships by 30 seconds because I was on the toilet. And I was so nervous that I actually sprinted to the start line. Yeah. And I was there. My heart rate was 185 before the race started. But what I'm saying there is taking advice from somebody who's been through it, and now you're being that person in a sports world where we've seen, for example, with the gymnastics, mm-hmm. and a sport that I love, and I spoke at an NCAA conference a few months ago in Cincinnati, but just the struggles they're having with, or should I say, the inspiring work of Ellie Reisman and these girls that are now coming mm-hmm. up and saying, me too, and speaking up, and you're one of those people as well. Yeah, and it's not to say like you have to go through something terrible to give good advice. That's not true at all. But those things that are just so personal and cut so deep, it is hard to take advice from someone who hasn't been through it, and it's tough. And I think also I feel a responsibility to share my story and my journey, because I didn't have a voice when I was going through those things, and I didn't have someone that I could reach out to, or someone that understood what I was going through. And I don't ever want someone else to feel the way I felt. And I think that's a big thing that drives me is speaking and giving that voice and putting it out there, even if no one listens, because if there is that one person that needs someone to reach out to or talk to, whatever it may be, I want to be that person, because I just know how terrible it is to not have anyone. Mm. Well, I just want to acknowledge you for speaking up about it, and obviously for being that person that was brave enough to do it, and obviously come onto the podcast today and speak about it, because as we know, you're not alone. There's a lot out there that need that voice. Yeah. So thank you for that. Earlier on in the podcast, you spoke about purpose. And purpose is a huge word in my life right now. It's something I've spent a lot of time researching and so on. Passion, purpose, vision. What's your purpose at this moment in life? You spoke about obviously wanting to be a champion in sport and Olympics and stuff, but what's your main purpose in life right now? So there's a Bible verse, Genesis 1:3, let there be light, and I try to make that my purpose. I want my purpose to bring light to whatever I'm doing or whoever I'm with, whether that means putting a smile on someone's face or talking about difficult things and bringing light to those topics. And I really try to make that my purpose, just bringing light to the world. We have enough darkness and negativity, and
terrible. And I haven't always been that way. I mean, growing up, my purpose was literally to go to the Olympics. That's all I cared about. It was like I was no one if I didn't accomplish this goal. It was the only thing that mattered. And then I actually went to a Christian athletes camp, Athletes in Action, and that just changed my life, going to that camp. And I realized there was such a bigger purpose than just being an athlete. There was so much more, and the reasons out there were so much bigger than myself. And so I really tried to like adopt that philosophy of like, you know, let there be light, let there be more to you than just what you do. If that makes sense at all.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful. Now, you're wearing a tracksuit at the moment and a shirt, the Clean Cliffs Project. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I started high diving, I kind of said to myself, I've done the whole I want to be the best in the world thing, and it didn't work out too great for me. And so this time around, if I'm going to do it and devote all my time, I want it, as we were talking about, to be a bigger purpose. And so as I started diving at all these different locations, I started noticing plastic pollution everywhere. So I'm from the Midwest, not by the ocean. So like I wasn't something I was exposed to until I started high diving. And all of a sudden it was like we were in Greece and Italy and these beautiful locations, and the water was trashed.
Not in Kansas anymore, huh?
Yeah, not in Kansas anymore. And I remember I had this experience where I dove in the water and I literally came up with a plastic bag around my ankle and was like, this is disgusting. And then I realized like no one was doing anything about it. And so I was like, to my teammate at the time, he's now my boyfriend, Owen Weymouth, I said, we got to do something about this. This is gross. This is terrible.
He's a diver as well?
Yes, he's a high diver as well. And so we were like, okay, what can we do? We want to do something with the plastic pollution. It's really relevant. Like right now, it's a big topic being talked about, as well as a big issue in the world. And so we were like, the Clean Cliffs Project. That's what we're gonna do. And
so it's your foundation.
It's my foundation.
Your foundation.
Yeah, we actually
named it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We started it. We started it a year ago. Actually, our very first project was in Croatia, like almost a year ago right now.
Do you have a website or something?
CleanCliffsProject.org, and you can follow us on Instagram, Clean Cliffs Project.
Okay.
And Facebook as well. And so our goal is to raise awareness about plastic pollution in our world's bodies of waters. So a lot of the time, people don't realize that plastic pollution comes from land-based sources. So it gets put in a river, which gets taken all the way to the ocean. So we say world's bodies of waters, as in lakes, rivers, and oceans. And our goal is to raise awareness about it and promote our sport.
And that's like even things. Sorry to jump in. That's even things like. Because my mother would always tell me this, was things like toothpicks and floss and plastic things that you throw down the toilet, for example, and just get rid of that. That is what ends up in the ocean and in the environment.
Yeah, and for me, I was someone that always was like, oh my God, give me a plastic spoon or fork or whatever, like just so I can throw it away and be easy, like because I didn't grow up knowing it was an issue. So it's something that was very new to me, and I've now started to change my habits. But I also, when we were starting it, we realized a lot of the organizations out there are very forceful. They're like, stop using plastic, like stop doing this. And we were kind of like, that doesn't really get people to want to do it. It's kind of like they're telling you to do it. So as a professional athlete, I mean, people look up to you and like what you do is kind of cool. So our whole idea was like, let's combine cliff diving, which is something that's pretty cool, at least in my mind, with plastic pollution and make it something people want to do, don't feel like they have to do.
That's awesome, putting a greater purpose behind it. That there's, as you know, I think purpose for me is something far greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, that wanting to be an Olympian and wanting to be a professional diver was a goal and an ambition, but it just wasn't a fulfilling enough purpose. Exactly. It wasn't, because we all look for fulfillment in life, for happiness.
Yeah.
Now, success, like you were talking about on the outside, can look completely different, So we look at your achievements and you go, wow, she's successful.
Yeah.
But only you know if you're happy or not, and that for me is success. So. And
I think today, I mean, we're just programmed to believe that once we have that one more thing, then we're going to be happy. Then we're going to be successful. And that's how I used to live my life. And now I, try to be like, do I have everything I need in my life to be happy? I do. I have great friends. I have, a purpose. I have a reason. I have friends. I have a great family. Like all these things.
Your
like,
health.
I have my health. Yeah, I have more than I need to be happy.
Yeah.
And so many people do. And they just don't realize it because they just get persuaded with the media and everything around them of like, I need a bigger house to be happy. Well, no, I think in a smaller house you're going to be more happy because you're going to actually have to have conversations with the people in the house. But, it's just what the world teaches us today.
Obviously, this is going to be going out in about 2-3 weeks' time, but today I'm posting a podcast called Comparison is a No-Win Game. And you're just speaking about social media and us falling sometimes into the trap of comparing our lives. And like, what am I doing for myself? Everyone's on boats, they're at the beach, they're having fun, they're they've got this, that, and they're like, what am I doing? And it's such a trap, isn't it, of comparing our lives to other people.
Oh yeah.
And thinking that they're happy because they are doing this or that.
And I find that a lot as people come up to me and, you have the coolest life. Like, you travel everywhere. Like, your life is so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my life. Like, it is awesome.
And you've made it what it is.
Yeah, and I've made it what it is. But I also say to them, but you get to be at home and you get to have a consistent home base and you get to have consistent friends and you get to enjoy being around, all of our friends. Whereas I'm always on the road. I don't get to be with you guys, with my friends, I mean, I've made friends on the road, but the grass is always greener on the other side.
So we think, yep.
Yeah. And just comparison is a huge thing. There's actually one girl, her name's Rihanna Iflin. She's the best female cliff diver in the world right now. And she kind of came into the series as a wild card, so not a permanent diver. And she won her first stop and won the whole tour in her first year. And then I came in the next year like, oh no, I got to be the next Rihanna, like I got to do that too. I got to win. And then I started realizing, well, I don't want, that was her experience and her journey. And that was a great journey and it's hers. I don't want her experience. I want my own experience and my own journey. And I think we get so wrapped up in wanting what other people have that we forget to realize how special it is to have our own journey that's just ours.
Yeah. We get to write our chapter of the book every single day, right?
Yeah.
So important, not comparing our journey to somebody else. I tell you, Ellie, we could go on here for 3 hours, and I could just keep chatting to you. It's been incredibly inspiring. It's been interesting. It's been educational. I know there's going to be a lot of listeners out there that are going to take a lot away from this. And did you mention you were 22 again? I mean, because
almost 23.
Okay, because you're speaking like you've had a good extra 20 years on top of you there. So, before we get into the rapid fire questions and that part, what drives you?
Just being the best that I can be.
I like that.
Yeah.
Simple. Being the best you can be. All right, so time for rapid fire and questions.
Okay.
Should I say rapid fire questions? One word or a sentence.
Okay.
You ready? All right, favorite food?
Pizza.
Favorite place visited?
Greece.
Favorite athlete, male and female? Past or present?
Female, Missy Franklin. She was a teammate of mine and she's amazing. Male, oh, that's tough. I probably have to say Gary Hunt. He's a high diver, so not a common name, but he's just an amazing athlete.
Okay. Gary Hunt. All right. Favorite hobby?
I don't know.
Singing?
I can't sing. I wish I could sing. Hobby. Oh my gosh. I like reading. I like learning, if that can count as a hobby.
Favorite book?
Oh, your book. Champion.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I didn't pay her to say that, by the way.
He didn't, I promise.
Okay. Worst habit?
This is going to sound weird, but being negative. I still have to fight that a lot.
I think all of us do.
Yeah.
You know what the difference is between negative and positive people? You'll probably know the answer from the other day.
They turn their negatives into positives.
That's a good answer. Is that...
I remember you saying this, but I don't remember exactly.
See, I tested you there. Positive people still get negative, All right, but they're able to let go of that negativity quicker.
Yes, that was it.
They're able to move on quicker.
I agree with that 100%.
All right, favorite music?
Rap.
Okay, any favorite artists?
Kind of everyone.
Okay. Tea, coffee, or protein shake?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to say tea. My boyfriend's British, so learn to like the tea.
Pet peeve?
I was telling you about this one earlier, but when people walk on their toes and they like bounce and don't put their heels down, drives me insane.
That is, I've never heard that as a pet peeve. Mine is people's table manners. But then I would suggest you don't go into a ballerina classroom, okay? Because they're all going to be walking on their toes.
But when they're dancing, I don't mind. It's like just when you're walking down the street on your toes. I don't like it.
You know what I'm going to be doing now? It's like that pink elephant
You're going to be looking for it.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking for it.
And you'll notice it, I promise.
Yeah, exactly. Weird. Favorite color?
Gold.
Champion-minded color.
Yep.
Actually, you should like my sneakers right now.
Oh, I do like those.
Those are Nike ID with the gold, the gold on them. Favorite sport besides diving?
Football.
Okay, any particular team?
Chiefs. Kansas City girl.
Kansas City Chiefs. Your best trait?
Open-minded.
Thanksgiving or Christmas?
Ooh, Thanksgiving.
Okay. Heels or sneakers?
I really like both. I like to be girly too, so depends where I'm going.
Okay, sneaker heels then.
Yeah, sneaker heels.
Have you seen those sneaker heels?
Yes. I don't think I'd ever wear those.
I think Nike did them, right? They're like those. Okay. Let's see. Person you'd like to meet or have lunch with?
Oprah.
One word to describe you. I know there could be 1,000, but if you could only choose one.
Interesting.
Okay, I can go with that. Lucky number?
3.
Why?
Because there's 3 places on a podium, and the top one sticks out.
My goodness, you are just driven from another planet, huh? I knew there was something when you walked in the room. There was this. Yeah. This one is different. Actually,
but number 9 is really my favorite because it's 3 threes.
Oh my god.
So either one is, I'm really weird about it. Like our order when we get called for diving, like if I'm like an even number, I'm like, oh, I'm not getting on the top of the podium this time.
Superstitious?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to work on not being so superstitious because I think it's can be a hurtful thing.
Give us another superstition of yours.
Like I always have to visualize everything twice, and then the third time is that time I actually do it because it's the number 3 is lucky. Yeah, just things like that, like little things.
Interesting. So, this has been amazing, Ellie. Thanks for taking the time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Thank you, and especially here in Minnesota as well. Last question: what does champion-minded mean to you? Being champion-minded.
I think being champion-minded to me just means being the best version of yourself you can be. Always striving to be better, but also being content with where you're at.
Very John Wooden, like. I like that. And before we go, I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that want to follow you and keep in touch with you. The best way for them to do that without giving any phone numbers or anything, but social media?
Yeah, Instagram's what I use the most. My handle's at Ellie Smart, so ELLIETSMART.
Okay. Anything else? Twitter, Facebook, nothing like that? Just Instagram?
Yeah, I really just use Instagram.
Okay, yeah. And you're, of course, the Clean Cliffs Project.
Yeah,
.com.
cleancliffsproject.org, and then Instagram Clean Cliffs Project.
Cool stuff. So before we go, I'd like to give you a copy of Champion Minded. I don't know if you have one already. I have one, but that is a signed one, and you also get a. I know you already have a yellow bracelet, but you get the for coming on the show the exclusive VIP black one.
Thank you.
So that's for you, but. Ellie, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome and such a pleasure to meet you.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. So interesting to get into the mindsets and preparation of extreme sports and sports we maybe don't get into as much on the podcast, but that's what Champion Minded Podcast is all about, is getting into the mindsets of high performers. So big thanks again to Ellie Smart. Remember guys that this podcast is available on iTunes and YouTube. Also join me on social media, on Twitter at Allistair McCaw, Facebook McCaw Method, and on Instagram Be Champion Minded. So remember, you were made for greatness. Now go do the work. Until next time guys, stay champion minded.